Hello everyone, it's me. I'm back with another video. I know it's been a long while since I posted a video. A lot has happened, details are important, but I'm back. And I know I'm a little late getting this video out there because we're in 2025 now. That's whatever. I'm here to talk about my top 10 favorite releases of 2024. 2024 has been a very interesting year for gaming, I will say that. So I've had a lot happen in the last year, but one thing that's remained pretty consistent despite all of the things has been my ability to game. I've been able to game pretty much on a weekly or more than weekly basis, if you will. And so while I didn't have the opportunity to play every game I wanted to play or demo everything I wanted to demo or whatever the case may be, I still managed to get a lot of gaming in and still managed to play a fair amount of new games that came out this year or that were new to me. But regardless, though, I'm going to keep it simple for this list. I'm only going to cover things that actually came out in 2024. There are some things that I've played over the last year that maybe didn't come out in the last year, but were new to me that I really enjoyed, but that's a little bit muddy in the waters, I would say. So I'm just going to stick to things that came out within the last year, and I'm going to tell you what I think of them. So first up on my list, coming in at number 10, it's got to be the Soda Pop Collection by Thunderbird Games. So I got this, I'm going to say around March of 2024. It was something that I had been anticipating for a little while at that point. I'm a sucker for a good two-player abstract game, and I think the whole presentation, the idea behind all of this, I think this whole collection checks off a lot of boxes. I think they've got some interesting ideas here. It could make for an easily expandable line. I can't say that I'm necessarily good at all the games that are in this collection, mind you, but I do enjoy them. Again, like I said, I enjoy the presentation of it all. I love that all the games look like little soda cans, that you can just kind of pop open and enjoy. And so I do appreciate that aspect of it all. But like I said, they are two-player abstracts, and again, I'm always a sucker for those. And I think especially Top Cap and Catacombs here definitely knocked that out of the park for me. They are just like these quick little games, and you don't have to take this whole box everywhere you go. I mean, if you want to enjoy them all in one setting, that's totally fine. But I mean, if you want to just grab one or two and slip them in a bag or in your back pocket or cargo pocket or whatever to take with you to like a restaurant or while you're waiting in line for somewhere that you can just pull out and enjoy, I think these absolutely fit that niche and fit it very well. I know over the last year they've been running a design contest to help make a new game in this line, if you will, another soda pop game, if you will. I'm very curious to see what comes of that. I think they're in the next stages. I think the designs have been submitted now and they're accepting voting. I'm not 100% sure. But again, I'm looking forward to them potentially expanding this line because these are just quick grab and go games you can pull out. Certainly good filler in between heavier games, or it could even just be a day of soda pop games that you could just pull out the whole fridge here and you could just spend all day playing a bunch of abstracts like this and having a really good time with it. So again, for me, my number 10 on this list has to be the Soda Pop Collection by Thunderbird Games. Moving on then, I'm going to take a look at the next game on my list coming in at number 9. It's going to have to be, for me, Landmarks by Floodgate Games. I remember when this was announced as a Gen Con release, and part of what really got me excited is that Floodgate was doing a quote-unquote launch event at Gen Con for this, and for me it was a no-brainer. They were offering like an incredible value that was like, hey, go spend an hour or two at this event, learn about the game, watch your favorite content creators play the game, and then get a copy of the game, all for a better price than what you would pay to just go pick it up at their booth. And I'm like, so I don't have to fight the crowds in the expo hall. I get to have a good time, and you'll give me a copy of the game. It's like, sign me up. And prior to that, though, I had watched a content creator friend of mine play this on her Twitch stream, and it was a lot of fun then. And I was like, yeah, I definitely want this. And I would say this has easily become my most played party game of last year. It's just really that good. I very much appreciate that it's in the same realm as like Codenames, so there's very much like word association going on here. That it's like you've got different words out on the map, if you will, and someone's going to be writing new words, and as the adventuring party, if you will, you have to figure out where do those words fit in. Where is the party leader trying to lead you, essentially? Where are they trying to have you go? Are you gonna find the treasure, or are you gonna make a misstep and land on a trap or fall for a curse, you know? And it's just a lot of fun. I appreciate that there are 2 modes of play, so it can just be, you can all play as one big group, so somebody's giving the clues, and the rest are trying to figure out where those clues fit in, or you can even play it in teams, and so there's like a bit of a race. It's like, who can find the treasures first and get off the island kind of a thing. And so I really appreciate that. I like that it's all, you know, like dry erase. So that's really nice. I would say I haven't played a lot of party games last year, so hard for me to say where this one might fall in comparison to everything else, but even so, I think this one is definitely one of the better ones that came out last year, and I wish it had honestly gotten more buzz than it did, because I think this one is fantastic. I would say if you're a fan of word association games like Codenames or otherwise, that you absolutely should give this one a try. I think you would easily have a lot of fun with it, just as much as I know I've had a lot of fun with it. And I look forward to continuing to get this one to the table, because it is that good. And I also appreciate that it doesn't overstay its welcome. Like, it doesn't drag itself on. And it can especially be a bit of a nail biter towards the end. That it's like, oh, we're like running low on water, and we've already got a curse. We need to find the amulet, and we need to get to the exit, or we're trying to find that last treasure. You know, it's like, can we do it before we run out of water? It's like a little bit of that tension there, and I love that. It's just it really adds to the experience, and I think it's just great. So for me, my number 9 of 2024 has got to be Landmarks. Next on my list is the only game on this list that I don't have immediate access to, as in I don't personally own it or have access to it from the library that is directly behind me here. Number 8 for me on my list is got to be Harmonies by Little Bud. And Harmonies is a surprise hit for me, honestly. It's really good. It has a very similar feel to Azul, and I don't say that negatively. I absolutely mean that positively. I just appreciate everything that it's doing. It's this delightful, like, abstract strategy that is just so delightfully puzzly, and I very much appreciate it. It's similar to Azul in the sense that you have the central board, and there are like 5 or 7 spots on there that you're picking a set of 3 tokens from, and then you have to take those 3 tokens and you have to fit them onto your like personal grid, if you will. But which tokens you take and where you fit them is going to depend a lot on like the animal cards that you're picking up. That might say that, oh, like you want maybe 2 yellows next to a 2 tall green or something like that. And so you're trying to finding the goals that best overlap while being able to get the tokens to fulfill those goals. And if you do everything well enough, you're going to be able to score a lot of points. The problem is that half the time the tokens come out and it's like you're looking for a particular set of tokens, just not out there. Like maybe it's missing one that you need. And it's like, how do I fit this on the board in a way that's going to make any sense and not ruin everything I'm trying to do? And it's a lot of fun. And I love all of that. And I even love the spirit and the nature spirit or whatever the little variant that they add in that is like, oh, here's an extra card you can start with that takes like one of the core scoring things, like whether it's for trees or for your long river or whatever, and further enhances that particular scoring. So it's like you can really lean into a given aspect of the scoring, which is something that I very much appreciate. Excuse me. And I mean, it plays well at all player counts, which is another thing that I appreciate. It's again, like it's this puzzle that I very much enjoy. I also enjoy playing it on Board Game Arena. I'm glad that it's on there. That's partly how I've been able to enjoy it so much and kind of fall for it, if you will. If I didn't have this is probably one of those games that if I didn't already have friend groups that own it, I probably would simply own it myself. So again, for me, and I'm sorry I don't have the box here. Hopefully future me has put a photo of it up here somewhere so that you can see what exactly it is I've been talking about this whole time. But yeah. For me, Harmonies is my number 8 of 2024. Coming in at number 7 on my list is a game that was genuinely a surprise for me, I would say. It's a game from a particular studio that I would say over the last couple of years they've dived really deep into like IP, or really heavily into IP games, I would say. And so when this came out, it was like a wholly original title for them. And I was like, that's a bit unexpected, I should say. And so when I eventually got to sit down and try it, I was pleasantly surprised by just how good it is. And so number 7 on my list of 2024 has to be The Veil of Eternity by Renegade Games. Boy, this is a really great game. It's a rather I would say it's a midweight card game, if you will. You're building up an engine, if you will, and it's so good. Like there's really a lot that I love about this. So each round, a fixed number of cards is going to come out based on the player count. And you're first going to, draft those cards. Like you're going to say, oh, I want this card and I want that card and you want this card and you want that card. And so you're going to draft the cards. You're not going to immediately do something with them. You'll just take your turns drafting them. And then once you've done that, then each player will take their whole turn doing something with the cards they drafted, whether it's to discard the card and get resource tokens, or take the card into hand, and then any card you have in hand, you potentially play into like a line of cards that you have in front of you. And they can do various things, whether it helps get you discounts or gives you abilities to convert your resources in certain ways. It's really interesting, and just trying to find all these nifty little combos of ways to try and get to 60 points before your opponents. It's so good. And it's like, I kind of gotten to a point that it's like I recognize certain strong combos, and it's like playing the game and trying to see, can I get one of those strong combos, or is my opponent going to be good enough or clever enough to try and deny me those combos? And it's so good. And even sometimes, like, just the more you play and finding other combos beyond the most obvious ones, it's really neat and interesting. And one of the things that I really appreciate is that it's played over 10 rounds, and the amount of cards that you can have played in your area is limited by what round you're in. So in the first round, you can only ever play one card in front of you, which is probably all you're going to have the resources to do anyways. But then by like round 5, you can suddenly have 5 cards in front of you, or like in round 10, you could have a full set of 10 cards. But usually, I think the game ends around round 7 or round 8. Sometimes it can get to 9 and 10, absolutely. But yeah, just the way that like starting out, this one feels slow, and it's like, oh man, this game, like you feel like, oh, this game's either going to drag, or you're thinking, how the heck does anyone get to 60 points in 10 rounds? Like, this is insanity. How does this happen? But then, like, as you start playing, and then you start seeing the ramp up, and it's like, oh wow, whoa! It's like round 8, like just kind of sneaks up on you. It's like, whoa, wait, he's like 2 points away from winning now. This is, how did this happen? And it's like, oh my. And yeah, it's really good, really simple, and I really like the fact that I know there's an expansion on the way for this. I don't know if it's already out or if it's going to be out later this year, but I would be very keen to try it out and see what that adds to the game. But as is, this is a fantastic game, and that's why it's number 7 on my list. That's The Veil of Eternity by Renegade Game Studios. Moving on, next on my list, coming in at number 6 for me, is a game that came out, I want to say around April-ish, May perhaps, of 2024. It's a game that I had the luxury of playtesting. And during the playtesting, it was up and down for me, I would say. Like, I understood what was needing to be done, but I think the earliest versions that we were playtesting felt a little rough, I would say. It was like, I'm not sure how to feel about this per se. Like, I'm playing it, I'm trying to do the best I can. Some games it worked great, and other games it was like, I don't know. Am I just bad, or is the game bad? And it's like, but I definitely think that what was finally released is really strong, really good, and I have no problems with it. I think the playtesting that was done, that I helped do, I think really helped solidify this as a solid game for 2024. Number 6 for me has to be Star Tycoon by Warped Core Games and Good Games Publishing. So there's a lot to like in this box. I mean, first of all, it's got a solid insert. The cards are good quality. It's got a lovely dual layer board for the Galactic Market, which is a standard component, which I appreciate. What I like about this is it is a delightful tableau builder that, like, you're building your galactic corporation, as the subtitle in the box says, but I appreciate that it's like a mix of like tableau building and goal chasing, that it's like you're getting planets and you're trying to match goals on those planets. And I just love the tension of like you're manipulating the market, that it's like one round maybe a resource is easily affordable, but then the next round it's like becomes scarce and therefore become expensive. And I just like all that delightful back and forth tension there, that it's like you can plan your turn to go a certain way, but then your opponent manipulates that market, and suddenly you're having to rethink things because now you can't afford the things that you wanted to get and be able to play the cards you want to play. And I just really appreciate what this is doing, because there is that goal chasing. It's like, oh, I'm going to get this planet, and I have these planets and solar system goals to start, that I'm going to go chase these things, and then you quickly realize that the cards you need either aren't coming out, or your opponent's taking the cards you need, and so then you're having to pivot, and it's like, it's a whole thing, and it's really good. And the artwork on this, if it isn't clear by the box, is fantastic. The publisher, the artist, did a phenomenal job with all the artwork in this game. I absolutely love it. I love that it scales well at all the player counts, and so like all that market manipulation just gets even more delicious at 4-player. But I also appreciate that there's a solo mode in the box, so if you're more of a solo gamer, you can still appreciate what this game has to offer. Yeah. But I think there's a lot in this small box, if you will, small compared to a lot of other ones, I would say. I think there's a lot to love in here, and I think what this game does, it does very well. If you're looking for a good medium weight tableau builder to pick up, I would say this is one to definitely put your eye on. This is my number 6, Star Trek. So with the bottom half, the 10 through 6, if you will, out of the way, we can move on to now the top 5 favorite releases of 2024. Coming in at number 5 is a game. It is a thematic sequel to a game that I very much enjoy. I remember when the first game in the series came out, it really wasn't on my radar when they initially crowdfunded it, but then after it had released and it got buzz, then I started getting inundated with ads for the game, and it's like, this wasn't strictly on my radar, but you keep inundating me with ads and you're just kind of wearing me down, and it's like, this sounds like this could be interesting. The more I looked into it, the more I was like, yeah, this is pretty nice. So, long story short, number 5 on my list is Moonrollers by Ivy Studio. Like I said, I remember when Moonrakers came, I remember after when Moonrakers had fulfilled and all of that, and I started getting inundated with ads, and it's like, okay, you got me. And when they ran the Kickstarter for the expansions, I was like, all right, I'll hop in. I already had the base game to that point, because I was like, okay, I'm going to get that. This seems right up my alley. Everything I was seeing, it was checking a lot of boxes that are of interest to me. And then they brought out the Titan box, and it's like, yeah, here's a big box that holds everything, even though the base box was already pretty big itself. But it's like, there's an even bigger box. And it's like, yeah. And by this point, I've now got so much content for that, but that's besides the point. I want to talk about Moonrollers. This is, again, the follow-up to Moonrakers. I remember hearing about this late 2023. It was starting to get pushed a little, and they were going to do a crowdfunding campaign right around the same time that PAX Unplugged was happening. And I was like, that's interesting. I kind of already knew that I was going to back this, especially because the campaign was like, oh, you like Moonrakers? Here's more content for Moonrakers. I was like, all right, well, I definitely want that, and I guess I can check this out. So I was probably going to back it anyways, but I went to PAX Unplugged, got to demo this, and after demoing it, I was like, oh, this is really good. I can't wait to go back this and enjoy it. And it came out, when did I get this? I want to say around early October I got this, and I've been enjoying it ever since. This is a super solid push your luck dice rolling game, and I think it's even better than most push your luck dice rolling games. Some of the notable ones that I've played, I've played Can't Stop, I've played Chicken, I've played Spots, but this one is in a class of its own. I really appreciate what this does. There's more to it than just, oh, you're rolling dice and pushing your luck. I mean, that is certainly a central element to it. There's a little bit of strategy in the ways that you push your luck, because on your turn, you're going to roll some dice, you're going to select one of the crew cards that are out there, you're going to select a requirement, and then you're going to use the dice that you rolled to try and fulfill that requirement. And as long as you can match at least, let's say the card needs 3 damage, as long as you roll a single damage that you can commit to that requirement, great. You can push your luck. You can roll on. And in fact, you would have to roll on at that point because you're already partially committed. If you can successfully get those 3 damage, then you have the delicious choice of, well, do I just stop here and leave my cube on the card, or do I push my luck? Do I think I can complete the whole card? And that's where it gets really fun, because, again, it's a push your luck dice rolling game. It's not a super deep game, if you will. So sometimes you're just I'll push my luck and see what happens. You will be like, maybe I can complete the whole card, especially because if you roll the dice in the right way, you can potentially get more dice to then roll on the next roll. And so it's a lot of fun. I also appreciate that there's also this bit that it's like, yeah, as long as you get cubes on the card, you're probably going to be getting points for those cubes at some point. But there's also this fun bit that it's like, you'll roll your dice and you'll complete like 3 requirements on the card, and there's like 1 left, and it's like, do I push my luck? Do I think I can do it? Mathematically, it's possible, but will it actually play out that way? I don't know. I could stop now and pass my turn, but that comes at the risk of the next person after me could just finish the card for me. I still get a lot of points, but then they're getting the card which comes with a good ability that could help make it even easier for them to push their luck in future turns. And so there's that bit of, well, maybe I don't stop here. Maybe I do push my luck. Maybe I do the whole card. And when I do that, not only do I get the points, but I get the card. And the card gives me an ability and also potentially gets me 1 step closer to winning. And I also love that there's kind of like, there's that layer of pushing luck, but then there's another layer that, like, sometimes when you're rolling for requirements on a card, if you're successful, you have to gain what's known as a hazard token, and that those hazard tokens can be worth varying amounts of points, but depending on the points they're worth, determines how many actual hazards are on those tokens. And so where it gets really fun is that at the end, you'll reveal all your tokens that were hidden up to that point, and whoever has the most hazard icons on all their tokens doesn't get to score the points for their tokens. So it's like, if you lean in and get a lot of high point tokens, you're probably not going to score for them. But if you do it just right, if you thread that needle appropriately, you can potentially get a decent chunk of bonus points that could kind of just push you over the edge into victory. And so I really appreciate all that it does. And of course, it's Ivy Studio. I mean, the production, that's the other thing. The production quality on this is top notch. Even if I didn't go for the deluxeifications of like the metal coins in this outer white box and hold it all, and that's the thing. I should probably, yeah, so that's the outer white box, you know. Gotta have the dice tray because it's a dice rolling game. But then this is the actual box itself. And even if all I had was just this, still a phenomenal game. I mean, I appreciate all the extras, and I couldn't imagine playing without them, but I mean, it's still a phenomenal game, even if you can't quite get those at this time. I don't know, I haven't checked recently, maybe you can, but that's beside the point. So for me, my number 5, Moon Rollers by Ivy Studio, fantastic game. Highly recommend. Next on the list would be my number 4, and for me, this is a game by a particular publisher that's well known, has a whole series of games, I would say. This particular game in this series feels the least like all the other games in the series, but that's not strictly a bad thing. But also, it's been 10 years since they started publishing games, I would say. Although we're in 2025 now, it's probably closer to 11. So that's the point. But yeah, so over those 10 years, they've learned, the publishers learned a lot about game design, and they were like, hey, that first game we put out, it admittedly could be better. We didn't know as much back then as we know now. What if we made a Redux? And so that leads me to my number 4, Shipwrights of Little Sea Redux. And like I've said, this feels the least like all the other games that they've done, whether it's Raiders or Architects or any of the South Tigers games at this point. Especially the South Tigers games, they all feel like very crunchy games, you know. I think they're all like, what, a 3.5 or above in weight, or certainly getting up there if nothing else. But yeah, this one, I'm not saying this one's light by any means. It's just, it feels very much unlike all of those. All of those are kind of like, you take a turn, I take a turn, you take a turn, so on and so forth. It's like all very turn-based. But this is a nice blend of, I would say, card drafting and I'm not quite sure if I want to say engine or tableau building, but like it's really great that you got an initial card draft. You'll draft 6 cards, and then you're all simultaneously going to do all that you can do with those 6 cards. Whether you're building buildings to give you extra spots where you can place workers and get extra resources and so on and so forth, or maybe you're touching craftspeople to make it easier to build ships, which is the main thing you're trying to do, which is build ships to help move you up on these 3 different tracks. And if you get far enough on a given track, better than anyone else, then you get extra heroes in the next rounds, which makes it easier to do the things that you're already trying to do. And it's really good. And admittedly, I remember like the first 2 or 3 times that I played this, it's like I was struggling. It's like I know there's a good game in here, but I'm just not seeing through the matrix, if you will. It's like I'm not fully sure how this is all supposed to just click. And then I actually found a solo playthrough video by the designer, watched that, and saw some of what he was doing. It's like, that makes a lot of sense. And now, like, I'm 30 plus plays of this in, and it's been solid every time. I very much enjoy it. I also appreciate that, much like all the games, it comes with a solo mode, which makes it even better. That like I can play it solo, and I can try new strategies or learn new combos or things like that. And it's just really good. And I've enjoyed all the solo mode plays that I've done up to this point. But there's like a set of cards in there that you can mix in to make the solo mode even harder. And it's like, I'm not saying that it's a cakewalk, but I didn't know that I needed to make it even harder. I haven't tried any of them yet, but I think I'm getting to a point that I could probably try one. I think realistically what would happen is it's just going to narrow the gap between mine and the solo AI's score, basically. But I could be wrong. Maybe that's something I can focus on in 2025. But no, like I said, this feels very much like an ORC game, but it feels unlike any of the other games that they've done. And I don't say that negatively. I appreciate that this is a shorter game. It's not like a 2 to 3 hour crunch that you would expect with like maybe the South Tigers games or like Paladins of the West Kingdom. No, this is probably like a solid hour and a half. And the fact that it's simultaneous just makes it all the easier to get it to the table and get it played. And yeah, I very much appreciate that. I don't have strong memories of the original Shipwrights of the North Sea. I may have played it once or twice. I don't remember enough about it to say that it was bad or that this is like a million times better or anything like that. But what I do know is I've played this, like I said, over 30 times. It is really solid. If you've not tried this one, but you do like the games that Garphill Games publishes, I would say this is one to definitely try. It's different than a lot of what they've done, and I just think that if nothing else, to me, that's why I would give it a try. But yeah. And of course, the component quality, it's the same standard high quality that you would expect from Garphill Games. They always do a great job with what they do. So yeah, that's my number 4. That's Shipwrights of the North Sea. So we're in top 3 territory now, and we're ready to take a look at my number 3 on the list. My number 3 has to be one of my biggest hits of the year. Every friend group I've showed it to has fallen in love with it. I remember when I first got it, a few months back, I showed it to my one friend group. They loved it. Like, absolutely loved it. Like, it was like, we met at their place, we played it, and they're like, this is incredible, let's play it again immediately. And we did. And they had so much fun. It's like, wow, that is incredible. Let's play it again. And I'm like, 3 in one night. That's rare for us to have a game that good that it's like, oh, we want to play it 3 times in one night. And that's especially rare given the length / weight of this game. I'm not saying it's super heavy or super long, but it's certainly longer than a lot of games that you would play in rapid succession, like Coup or Skull or other lighter partyish games or things of that nature. Yeah, so like I said, this has been a huge hit for me. what initially won me over is earlier in 2024. It had just landed on Board Game Arena, and a friend had set up a table, and it's like, oh, I know nothing about the game, but if I get to play with a friend, I'm not going to say no. So I hopped on, played it, loved it. Like, I was like, wow, this is a really good game. Like, oh boy. And so I was like, how do I get this? Where do I get this? Tell me more. And I went looking into it, and it's like, oh, it's a crowdfunding game. And I missed the boat, didn't I? And they're like, you can late pledge. And I was like, can I? And it's like, what I was given to understand at the time, I had like a day or two left to late pledge. And it's like, okay, make that happen. And then not too long after, a few months later, I managed to get my copy, and I have loved every minute of it since. If you remember my video talking about most anticipated Gen Con, I was hoping to sneak a demo with this. I really wasn't able to find them, so didn't get that demo, but it's all water under the bridge. I'm going to stop leaving you in suspense and just tell you that my number 3 is Fromage by Road to Infamy Games. This is a delightful worker placement game all about making cheese, and what this does, it does incredibly well. I can't say enough good things about this. I feel like the only reason you wouldn't enjoy this game is if you're lactose intolerant, but even if that were the case, you could still appreciate it for its mechanics, which are really beautiful. But yes, what I love about Fromage, I mean, first of all, the artwork's just really strong, really good. But the board is shaped like a wheel. Cheese wheel, yeah, haha. But it's broken up into 4 quadrants, and each of those quadrants you're going to be doing worker placement-y things, and so it's like you'll have a quadrant that's facing you, and you'll do things in that quadrant, and then the board will rotate. And where it gets fun is typically when you're doing those worker placement things, you're going to have to set your workers to a given age, whether it's like an age 1, age 2, or age 3. And depending on the age, when the board rotates then, if they happen, like if it's an age 1, that means they'll be facing you when the board rotates. Whereas if it's an age 3, you'd have to wait like 3 full rotations before it's facing you again. And why that matters is because you'll do your things, the board will rotate, and then any workers that are facing you come back to you. So you can do a bunch of small things and know that you'll always have workers every turn, but you're probably going to, at points, be limited on resources or limited on spaces you can go. But if you commit workers to some of the bigger spaces, it's like you're probably getting more reward for it, but then you're risking having turns where you don't have any workers to put out. And such a delicious tension. And I love that like every quadrant has its own methods or own means of scoring points. And then you've got like other things you can focus on. It's like there are like 4 resources and you can pick one of them. It's like, I'm going to lean heavy into this, or I'm going to lean heavy into that. And you're going to find ways to make that pay off for you. And there's just so much to love about this. Now, I will admit I have the limited edition copy, but even if I didn't, the game would still be incredible. I mean, the only things that the limited edition does for me is I've got a nice Lazy Susan mat to put underneath it, which makes it a little easier to rotate the board, but it's not like it's impossible without the mat. And this has deluxe wooden resources, which are nice, but I mean, if all I had was the cardboard, I wouldn't lose sleep, if you will. But yeah, this is incredible, and I love that I already know that there's a sequel on the way, an expandalone, if you will, known as Formaggio. I believe that's Italian for cheese, and I believe you're going to be able to mix and match everything in a way that's going to be really good, and I super look forward to that. As much fun as I've had this, and the way that, from all the information I've learned about the upcoming one, it's like, there's just so much to love. I think this one is sold out at the moment, so it might be tough to find a copy, but if you have the opportunity to play this, even if you just go on Board Game Arena and do it, I highly recommend you check this one out. This one is super strong, and in fact, I'll even play a game with you on Board Game Arena. Just hit me up on there, no questions asked. But yeah, for me, this is my number 3, and it's a strong one at that. This is Fromage by Road to Infamy Games. So we're in top 2 now. And of those, we are going to look at my number 2 on the list. That is favorite releases of 2024. I want to be clear that I've been careful to specify releases of 2024 and not just games, because my number 2 is actually an expansion. The only expansion on my list, I will say that. So that's a small spoiler for what my number 1 won't be. But yes, this particular expansion, if you've been following along with my gaming journey up to this point, you might be able to figure out pretty quickly what my number 2 is. But my number 2 is something that I actually had the luxury of playtesting. That's a whole journey that I've covered in other ways up to this point, so I don't need to go over it all again. But let's just say I was incredibly over the moon to be given the opportunity to playtest this thing. And then I remembered when that playtesting wrapped up, and I had to wait. Because I couldn't say anything, and I had to wait, and wait, and wait for over a year till they finally mentioned, oh, this is the thing that's going to exist. But even still, like, I had to remain quiet because they didn't say all that they could have said. You know, it's like, hey, this exists, but we're not quite telling you all there is to know about this yet. And it's like, oh man, but I know all there is to know about this. And it did end up then launching at Gen Con last year, 2024. And if you were lucky enough to be there, you could snag your copy there, which I was able to do that. And unfortunately, if you weren't at Gen Con, you had to pre-order it through the publisher's website. And I know there was a small delay in that. They were hoping for, I think, a September release, but then things got pushed back and it was closer to late October, early November, I think, until they finally delivered. But they tossed in a pair of like alt art cards as a thanks for waiting kind of thing, which I think is nice. Part of me wishes I had his alt art cards, but then again, it's like, well, part of me got to play test it, and then another part of me got to get their copy early at Gen Con. I can't complain. I thoroughly enjoyed it. If you haven't figured it out by now, let this be the giveaway. And if that's not the giveaway, then my number 2 is the Cult of Chrome expansion for Radlands. Now, I specifically have the fancy Super Deluxe Edition, and so I've got the fancy synth cards, and I knew that I needed the synth cards for the expansion. But yeah, for me, Radlands, easily, probably one of my top 10 games of all time. And I mean, it would, yeah, I definitely think it would be on the list. I don't know exactly where, probably top 5, but yeah, this is just a really, really, really good 2-player, like, card battler. It's like, I don't want to say, it definitely gives off Magic vibes that like you're playing cards and trying to find combos and you have a limited resource that's water. I don't need to do a deep dive into the game itself, but the expansion, yeah. If you've played Radlands even a little bit and you love the game and love what it's doing, I can't recommend the expansion highly enough. Like, I mean, for me, there's not much to it. It's just a full set of camp cards. So if you know anything about the game, you know how integral those camp cards are and how much they can change the gameplay from one game to the next. And yeah, this expansion just gives you more of that and more to love and more opportunities to find all those crazy combos, which is really, really good. It's like, this is like an instant pickup for me, like easy peasy. I would say if you're looking to buy the base game, you don't need to get the expansion with it right away. I would say get the base game, play it a handful, maybe a dozen times, and then you're like, oh yeah, I really like this. Don't hesitate to get the expansion then, because I mean, it's just, yeah, I mean, I admit some of it, you could maybe say that some of the reason it's on here is bias and the fact that I did get to play test it, which is still an incredible moment for me. But no, I really like this game. It is really that good. Even if I hadn't play tested this, even if I wasn't gifted a copy because of that, you know, I still would have. This would have been one of my first and foremost pickups at Gen Con last year because yeah, I really like the game that much. It's just, yeah. I and oh, the artwork. If you play the base game, you know how great the artwork is. This just gives you more of that artwork to love. And I should also say that this also has 10 replacement camps in it, which fixes a lot of the problem camps from the base game that were like some of the ones that were like either really bad or really weird in their interactions. So this just does a fine job of fixing up some of those weaker camps and bringing everything on a nice, potentially more balanced level, if you will. Yeah, so for me, that's my number 2, the Cult of Krove expansion for Radlands. So, we've arrived at the end. My number 1 favorite release of 2024. As I noted in my number 2, it's not an expansion, so it's a full game. This one is part of a series. It's by a publisher whose games I absolutely enjoy, and if you follow me on social media, that could reasonably narrow it down to 2 publishers whose games I very much enjoy. But one publisher, I have a golden ticket with them. I just get everything they make. But the other publisher, I have to go acquire all the things that they put out, and I'm okay with doing that because I love everything that they've put out. I mean, I don't have everything of theirs just because certain games, I don't know. They have like a big series, and I've mostly been sticking to everything in that big series, but they have like a side or a separate series, very strong, mind you, but like some of what's in there was kind of like, I'm just sticking to the big series for now. In time, I might grab some of what's in that side series, if you will. But yeah, this is the conclusion of a trilogy, and this, for me, it's up there. It's really, I don't know if it's my absolute favorite game that they've published, but it's certainly up there. It's really good. I love everything that this game is doing. You're having to manage dice in a particular way. You have what's known as craftspeople that you're trying to, like level up, if you will. You're coming up with ideas, you're coming up with devices, and you're building those devices. You're coming up with ideas for devices, and you're building them, and you're testing them, and you're publishing them, and you're doing all these different things, and so many layers and so much going on. And like I said, you got the dice, which you've also got some workers, and much like the other 2 games in this series, influence is an integral part of it, that you're earning it and you're spending it, and you potentially can earn points for it. And I mean, it's just, if you haven't figured it out by now, it is Inventors of the South Tigris. This is my top release of the year. I'm a huge fan of Garphill Games' games. I mean, these are probably some of my most played games for the year. I mean, certainly this came out, this came to my friendly local game store, early November I picked it up. And from then to the end of the year, I've played it like 9 times. And like, none of those were solo plays, by the way. Because I also do very much enjoy playing the game solo. At the time of recording this, though, I have tried this solo once the other day. It was a rather interesting experience. I didn't win, but a lot of that was just trying to understand the flow of the solo bot and how all that works. I think if I did it again, I might do a little better, but that's immaterial to where I'm going with all this. But yeah, this one is definitely crunchy, though. It is easily one of their crunchiest, if not their most crunchy game. I don't say that to necessarily scare you away. I just say that to kind of temper your expectations, to kind of let you know what you're getting yourself into. I would say this is very much on the opposite end of the spectrum compared to my number 4, Shipwrights in the North Sea. They're very much different games. This one is a lot heavier, has a lot more going on. I would say a lot of the complexity, it's not crazy hard to understand that it's like, okay, you have dice, you have workers. You can place workers on a spot and do a thing, or you can place dice on a camel and do one of the core actions of maybe inventing a device, or building it, or testing it, or publishing it, or you can place your dice on a workshop to like get a chain reaction of effects that can give you resources and other things. I think it's not crazy hard to understand what your options are, but I think the complexity comes in how all those options can overlap and what might be the best course of action. But even so, I love this game and how it works my brain, and I love games like this and how they work my brain. I appreciated what Scholars was doing. I appreciated what Wayfarers was doing. Paladins was big for me. I do like Viscounts. I wouldn't say it's crunchy though in the same way that this is, Viscounts for me was like deck building, and like I've kind of gotten to a point that like I know what I like to do in that game, and for me, I like to run a thin deck. Some people don't play it. It's like any card that looks remotely good. It's like, oh, I'll take that. I'll take that. I'll take that. It's like, how do you play the game when you got a deck of like 20 cards? It's like, no, I need to be to a point that it's like I'm shuffling every turn. Yeah, I'm probably getting lots of corruption because of it, but you gotta take the good with the bad, and it's like that's just me. But no, that's tangential. Inventors is super solid for me. I think it's a worthy conclusion to the South Tiger series, but as a base game, it's a conclusion. But I would hesitate to say it's a conclusion definitively because. Coming this year, we have the 3 expansions for the South Tigris. The Wayfarers, Scholars, and Inventors are all getting expansions, and I very much look forward to them, especially for Inventors. I looked at what's down the line for Inventors, and I am beyond excited. What it has to add to the game, I'm like, wow, this is super good. I can't wait to get these. I can't wait to get these to the table. I know that a lot of what's coming down the line has largely already been play tested, and I know that if I were to be more attentive on their Discord, I could probably be already play testing these things, but I already do a lot, and there's only so much time in a day. If I magically had more time, I probably would help play test a lot of their games, just because I find them all to be so good. Yeah, I can't say enough good things about this. I would say if you've played the other 2, if you've played Wayfarers and Scholars and were on the fence about picking this one up, I would say to not be on the fence. I would say just go for it. If you like those, you're going to like this. I would say if you're more on the outside that you've not played any of the South Tigers games or really any of their games, probably would not start with this one. This one is very much on the heavier side of things. This is almost creeping up into Vital Lacerda territory in terms of complexity, but I've handled this no problem, so that's just me though. But yeah, there's just so much going on here that I love, and like I know the first like 2 or 3 times that like I played this game, like I'm just trying to figure out all the motions of like how does this work and how do these things interact and like what's the best way to go about this. And it's like the first few times I played it, I was playing with their like shorter mode or like their 3-round game, and I never felt like in those games that it's like one of the 4 main things you can do is test inventions, and that helps push you down the river and allows you to do more research and unlock more benefits and things like that. And it's like I never felt like I was being encouraged to do those things, and so I felt it difficult to want to do those things when the game's telling me, hey, do these other things. And it's like, well, I want to try this. And so when I had my first 4-round game, like the first standard game, it's like, you know what? I don't care what happens. I don't care if the game tries to tell me to do a certain thing. I'm just going to test and test and test. And I loved it. That I think that game is what sealed it for me as my number one release for the year. Like that game just went so well. I felt so satisfied by the end. It's like, man, look at all these things that look at everything that I accomplished. Like I felt like just so good. And it's like I focused on a thing that in none of the previous games I felt I could focus on, and I did, and it worked. And it's like, wow. That isn't to say that it's like, I'm not trying to say that you have to focus on testing in order to win the game by any means. You can certainly focus on all the other areas of the game and still come out ahead. But yeah, I really love this game, and I look forward to getting it to the table a whole lot more in 2025. Just as I know I'm going to get all the Garfield games to the table, because especially in the latter half of 2024, I've been on a real kick. My one friend, like we meet almost weekly, and we will play a different Garfield game every time. It's gotten to a point that it's like we've come up with a little wheel. We just spin the wheel, whatever it lands on, that's what we play, and I'm all for it. But yeah, this is an easy number one for me. If you love the South Tiger series or you love their games in general, and you don't mind a little complexity, I would say absolutely check this one out, because this is my number one for 2024. All right, so that's gonna wrap it up for this video then. That was, again, I've said this many times, that these were my top 10 releases of 2024. If you liked what you've seen, give it a like, thumbs up, repost, reshare, whatever, all the standard typical things, you know. Just go ahead and spread it out there. Share it with whoever you want. I'd appreciate it. But yeah, that's all I've got for today's video.